Okay, Barry.
Morning.
All right, now I'm going to try my other device.
Kind of soft. I got to turn my radio down. Got this on.
Oh, okay, testing. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, that's much louder. Now it's good.
Okay, let me turn off some other stuff here. Okay, now let me get to the right window. And let me see if you can see me.
Yeah, there you are.
Okay, all right.
Now you're visible and you're audible. You're coherent.
Okay, let's see who else is here. Somebody else has joined.
Unless Joshua's here.
All right, okay. Okay, so 2 weeks ago, I think I said I was going to try a tool. I still haven't gotten OBS set up, but I am set up to use this MindMeister thing. So let me see if I can get there.
The who thing?
It's something called MindMeister.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I'm going to share it briefly and see if it helps us at all. And then we can talk about, some feedback we got from one of our past sessions. All right, let me share this window here. Okay, I need to put this on the same screen. All right, let me see if I can do this now. Share. Here we go. Share. Share. Uh, why is it not sharing?
No, it's not sure.
Okay, I'm going to pick a window. It's picked the wrong window. What do you see on the screen?
Joshua won't be on camera. They will listen to these things.
Okay. Are you seeing any of my screens or are you not seeing any of my
Oh, you're
screens?
not sharing. You're not sharing. You just got two
Failed
cameras
attempt
on.
right there.
One camera on and one camera off.
All right, let's see if I can do the desktop and share the entire thing. You're still not seeing it?
You're not sharing.
All right. All right. Sorry. I'm going to go back to one other machine. This is taking a little bit of a hassle here, but it was a hassle last week. It's a hassle this week. Give me 2 more minutes. Let's try and fix this. Okay. I'm going to go to the right screen on machine number 1.
Sharing function is enabled, authorized.
Yep. Yes, it is.
Either of the computers should have the ability to turn on sharing.
Let's see if this works now. Okay, I'm logging in on this machine number one.
I don't think you actually have to be logged in to share.
So I'm logging into MindMeister. I'm talking about. Not to
Oh, I
Zoom.
see. You're logging into the function you want to.
Yes, yes. All right. Okay, now let me try sharing. Okay, share window, share.
It's doing it.
Okay,
Also,
now are you seeing something?
well, not yet, but it's trying to come up. It hasn't come up yet, but it's trying to. Now it's come up. Also, I think that I think you've got mics open on both computers because the chat is
Yeah,
stupid.
that's true. Let me turn off this mic over here. Okay, is that better?
No, both. You're getting double chat.
Still testing one, two, three. Testing one, two, three.
Yep, both of your mics are open.
All right, testing one, two, three. Testing one, two, three. How's that?
Now only one of them is open.
Okay, all right, good. All right, are you seeing anything on screen?
There's some colored rectangles and a tiny little mouse that's moving.
Do you
Can't,
see a
I
box
can't.
with your name on it?
Maybe if I zoom the screen, I'll be able to make it out. Let's see.
Let's see.
Person,
Maybe. Let's see if I can zoom this
I
thing.
see person and then a digit. I can't make out the digit. It's too small. Well, Sam, person three. Yeah, Barry, Sam, person three. Problem statement. I can barely read those. They're kind of tiny. Yeah, okay. I can see a pink Sam, a purple Barry, a blue problem statement, a red person three,
Yeah.
yellow person
So
four. I don't know. Person five is also yellow. Person six is green. It's not really
okay.
like
So I put Josh in there since he's here. And what I thought I would do, since it's interesting to me, we'll see if it's interesting to you guys, is there was a post by your friend, your very good friend Richard Saunders this past week. You recall the post that I'm talking about?
I don't know if I saw it or not. I've been sort of out of it all week. I've been sick all week.
Ah, that's too bad. What ails you?
Well, it began with gastrointestinal issues last weekend, and no solid foods on Saturday and Sunday last week, and then gradually, slowly improving, but lack of sleep, being tired and logy, and gastrointestinal issues, and slow, ever so slowly. I didn't go in to do any volunteer work on Tuesday or Thursday. I basically kind of was out of it pretty much every day of the week. Doing a little better today, but I'm still a little tired and a little low. And I also was fainting. I had a couple of fainting spells and had episodes of upchucking on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I don't have a, I mean, it was a complicated melange of issues.
I'm sorry to hear that, Barry.
I didn't take any, I didn't test for COVID or anything. Oh, I also had a runny nose. Um, so I had a runny nose, a sore throat, upchucking, gastrointestinal issues, lack of sleep, logy, fainting. It was all just a very slow recovery over the course of the week. Stayed home all week. Didn't even go out to pick up the mail because it was raining a couple of days. I didn't want to go out in the rain. And finally, I picked up my mail after 5 days yesterday.
Well, talk about rain and weather, small aside. We have a wind advisory from 1 a.m. this morning to 4 p.m. this afternoon. So we have 8 more hours of this wind advisory.
Mm.
The winds are supposed to gust up to 50 miles an hour. Last time we had 70-mile-an-hour winds, and we were out for 48 hours without power.
Yeah,
So if I drop off suddenly, that might be the cause. So I'll issue apologies in advance.
yeah. Well, I mean, everything has been discombobulated, not just my own health, but politically and climatologically, weather-wise, things have been really, kind of dicey. Not just my personal case, but worldwide and everything. This last week has been ridiculous. Our whole civilization is tottering.
Thought I'd avoid that topic this week
I'm
and
thinking a
bring.
lot about that stuff, though. I mean, I haven't really articulated. I articulated bits of it last week, but I've been doing a lot of thinking, but I haven't really tried to articulate it in any analytical or objective way. But there's things that need to be said that I think have analytical or objective bases, not political or preferential or partisan, but things that might have a solid analytical foundation, like a systems thinking kind of foundation that is kind of being overlooked. Move your head. Okay, yeah, you're there.
Okay, I'm still trying to learn how to use this thing. That's one of the
Sometimes
problems
when you
here.
don't move a muscle, I can't tell if you're still sending a live picture. All right. So anyway, did you want me to kind of parse this image or something? Well, there's really not
No,
much on
I'm
it.
taking notes because here's the post that Richard Saunders sent 4 days ago. He's talking about basic features that he would like to see in a modern enlightened society. And he talks about, let me see, how many features has he mentioned here? He's got them numbered. 9 features. Okay. So since this is something I found new, oh, wait, how to use this stuff. Okay, anyway, the 9 are, and then I'll try and record them later on, but I'll just give it to you verbally for now. Okay. In fact, I'll turn off the screen sharing until I can figure this out. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you might, if they're not too long, you might put them in the chat because if you read them orally, I won't capture them very
All
reliably.
right, let me go to where he has posted this. It was in the co-sensing group, co-sense making group.
You have to
And I'm gonna,
accommodate me that my audio recollection faculties are not as good as
I've heard you mention that.
one might want them to be.
Stupid. I'm on this Windows machine right now, and it's the slowest of my machines. Arg. But it's one of the beefiest. So I just really dislike Windows for this reason. Got 64 gigs on it, and Chrome browser can't even blow up another page.
I found that online stuff is becoming more and more erratic and problematic. YouTube is
Finally.
awful. YouTube has got
But,
so damn many commercials all the time now. It's almost useless.
you should get YouTube Premium. I avoid the commercials. You have to pay like 15 or 16 or 17 bucks a month, but for me, the time savings and the distraction savings are worth it. Okay, I'm gonna post this that Richard posted. He sent it on December 9th. Here we go.
What day is it, 13th? Today's the
Uh,
14th.
Why did it disappear?
Yeah, I probably didn't read it. I was probably out of it that day.
Okay, let me see if I can put it back into the chat here. Because I thought it'd be definitely useful to interact on these ideas and possibly invite Richard to a future session, just like we did with HG.
Yeah, I'm generally in alignment with most of Richard Saunders' stuff. Not everything, but mostly I don't find anything objectionable in what he writes. Then again, I'm not as diligent as I once was about processing people's writings anymore. Become aged and sloppy and lax.
And by the way, later on this session, I would like to go back to some of the feedback on the video that I asked for this past week.
You talking about comments on YouTube?
No, I'm talking about the session where you and I had an incident last week, and I got frustrated when you interrupted me. And when it got posted, the various people have commented on that incident and suggesting various different ways that I contributed to the problem. So I wanted to review some of that.
Well, that's the stuff I've been thinking about offline, but haven't articulated since I've been thinking about it. I spent
Yep.
about a week thinking about that stuff, or at least parts of it.
Yeah, I would like to get your feedback on that as well. Why is this browser so bleeping slow?
Is it Chrome?
It is crawling.
Yeah, something in the browser world. Chrome has been updating the browser practically every day.
It's getting slower and slower and slower. I'm about to dump it for something else.
I don't know if there are vulnerabilities that they keep finding and they're racing against vulnerabilities. All I know is that practically every day I get a notice that Chrome's got a new update.
Okay, I just sent it. Yeah, it took me so long to send it. No, I didn't. It's still not sent. Oh, it says it's too long. Oh, darn it.
Yeah, you only
It's
get
2,000
that's better
characters,
than
and I can only send 1,000 characters at a time.
yeah, that I hate that. You can only do 1,000 characters in chat. That Zoom between YouTube and Zoom, they're clamping down on the functionality to the point where they're becoming increasingly dysfunctional and loss of utility to the point where I'm becoming increasingly annoyed with both of them.
Yeah, simply because people choose bad technology and bad programming practices and bad technology stacks, we have these stupid limitations.
Well, it's a consequence of everything being monetized instead of for the general public interest, convenience, and
All right, I
necessity.
think I split it up now. Here's the first few points, and then I'm going to put the tail end of it. Okay, so there we go.
Well,
Do you
that's a
see it
long,
now?
yeah, it's going to take me a while to read it though. Basic features I'd like to see in a modern enlightened society. All right, so this is Richard
Yeah.
Saunders'
Yes.
preferences. One, general utility, the greatest good for the greatest number. Yeah, utilitarian. Life cycle accounting, incorporate all known externalities. Yeah, this is sort of a objective, long-term objective analyses that are not partisan, political, but for the greatest public good. Subsidiarity, social and political issues handled at the lowest or most local level that is consistent with the solution. That's problematic because then you get differential practices in differential locales, which means you don't have uniformity across your culture. There's a problem with it. Relative openness and transparency, privacy protection maximize at the individual level, but openness and transparency increasingly. I'm not sure. I have to spend some time parsing that because privacy and openness are mutually contradictory, and I don't really know how you balance those. Conditional ownership, balanced combination of public and private property rights. See, I tend to lean towards socialism more than private ownership because private ownership has this long history of inequity. Fair regulated competition between public and private spheres. Yeah, I believe in it, although I think it's extremely difficult to achieve fair and regulated. Even though I think it's a good ideal, I don't think we've learned how to do it. Limited wealth inequality to some democratically chosen ratio. Well, I don't know about the ratios, but I think we do have extreme inequality, which is very unstabilizing and creates chaotic behaviors by people who are at the tipping point and you don't know who the hell they are yet because you got such a inequality. Instant runoff and ranked choice. Oh, I see. Partial. Yeah, this whole business of voting systems, all these voting systems have difficult to analyze flaws in them. And there's no known solution that doesn't avoid some of the flaws that are going to crop up in any kind of voting system. So I'm a little bit leery of voting systems in general because they simply cannot achieve all the desired features that are wanted. Automatic federal forensic audits and statewide manual recounts of elections in which the margin of victory is less. Well, I don't disagree with that, except I don't know how the hell you would carry that out in a way that people find satisfying. It's not undesirable thing, it's just I don't know how to do it. Is that the end of it? Is there more? I think that's it.
That's his original post.
Okay.
And rather than comment as you comment, I wanted to let you go through breadth first, capture everything in your first complete pass, and then discuss each of these. Like number 2, for example, I do not understand. But let me just step back and say, is this of interest to you?
Well, it's not of disinterest, but it's a hell of a lot of information processing and thinking, which I don't know that I have the faculties of alertness to do in an hour today. I might have to spend a lot of time working my way through these. Some of them I think I can articulate some reactions. Others I just scratch my head and I say I don't know how to operationalize them. I mean, a lot of things you can agree in principle, but you can't reduce them. I can't figure out how to reduce them to the practice that everybody can agree on an optimal practice. That's the problem in politics, is that you agree that there's a problem, but you can't agree on a solution everybody will sign on to.
Okay, now I'm going to share again and see if this is more useful again this time. Okay, do you see a window now?
Nothing's showing up yet. There's no information. Oh, now it shows up. So now I see one of these, what do you call this, main brain, or whatever you call it.
It's a rough approximation of a mind map, I guess.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they have.
So you put the labels in. You put the labels in for Richard Saunders, however many
Yes.
So you just simply put in labels, but then
Yeah.
you have
For
to
now. And
unpack.
as you have ideas and as we have ideas and as we elaborate each of these, maybe we can, flesh this out a little bit more. Like, for example, general utility. Okay. So what he says about general utility is the greatest good for the greatest number. Now, that is a presumption that is the best way to do. So let me just put that in as the detail here. Greatest good for the greatest number. Okay. So let's say that's a going in position. There's probably other interpretations of general utility. Okay. Like, for example, I will propose another one. Okay. The most beneficial outcome for our survival, right?
Yeah,
That's a very different notion of what general utility means. And I think there are various ways it obviously differs from greatest good for the greatest number.
yeah. You can argue that Pareto optimality makes sense, but Pareto optimality is not a unique solution. That is, it's a frontier of interchangeable solutions, but then how you apportion them so that they're equity, so you have equity is an unsolved problem.
Yeah. I added one more detail here in the second bullet, which is I'm talking planet wide, all
That's
species, all ecosystems.
that makes it really hard because now you've got to consider not only minority humans, but minority species and the
Right.
role of minority species in the ecosystem. And then we simply don't have reliable
Yeah.
models. What happens if the monarch butterflies die? People can't really give you a good prediction of what happens if a species dies out.
Yeah. So I annotated the first bullet and say if you talk about greatest good for the greatest number, that might be taken to be too human centric.
Well, yeah,
So,
that's yes, and civil rights of minorities is a very, very difficult issue there.
right. Okay. So let's just do a first pass on each of these. Okay. So let's go to life cycle accountability. I heard you comment on this as though you understood it. I'm not quite sure I understand it, but I can interpret it in such a way that it makes sense to me. But hearing you talk about it made me think you're thinking something very different than what I was thinking about. So, do you remember what you said about life cycle accountability?
I don't remember what I said, but I can say what I still think, and that is,
Okay.
and this gets back to if you have really, really good models of what's going to happen, so very good, reliable predictions, you can see if some of the predictions are problematic. The problem is that we don't generally have really good models. So we overlook some aspect uh, that's going to happen downstream, and it may be beyond our ability to calculate or predict, and overlooking it could turn out to be problematic.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, even though it's a really good idea to have life cycle accounting, all known external, we don't know all externalities. There are just some that crop up after the fact. It's the Archimedean property of tiny numbers. You can have a tiny number that's seemingly inconsequential, but if it persists for a long enough time, it can add up to as big a thing as you like. And a good example are these PFAS chemicals like Teflon and others. When they were first invented in the 1930s, they were wonderful. They had they had firefighting properties and all these wonderful properties, and everybody thought they were great. But they were forever chemicals, and they persisted in the ecosystem, and they had no way to break down. And so these little plasticized particles and these other particles. And after 50 years, we discovered that we didn't account for the buildup of these forever chemicals that were basically now creating health problems, not just for humans, but for species. And this is the problem. A tiny phenomenon that builds up over decades turns out to be important. Climate change was an example with the with the carbon in the atmosphere and PFAS chemicals, and there are others examples which I don't know if I can take them all off anymore. But it's a good idea, but we're not any good at it. They didn't account for global warming in the Arctic. Global warming in the Arctic and the loss of the glaciers is happening a lot faster than the models predicted, a lot faster, like 2 or 3 times faster than the models predicted.
Yeah.
And that says, oh dear, we didn't do life cycle accounting in a sane way or in a sensible way because we didn't know enough.
Yep.
And now we're screwed.
Okay, so are you seeing as I follow along, adding nodes to this graph here?
Well, I wasn't trying to read while I was talking, but I can see you're adding.
No, but I just wanted you to review and see if you can see what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let me tell you what came to mind when I saw this life cycle accountability thing. Obviously, a lot of this could be clarified if we got Richard on the session here, but thought it'd be good for us to try and take a whack at this. And I don't actually know him personally, so I don't have any of his contact info. So maybe you do. So we could do that at a later stage. All right. So what I saw when I read life cycle accountability is the first appearance of this word cycle suggests subsystems, flow, conservation of, whatever it is that we're talking about. So I thought this was kind of a nod, if not a direct reference to systemic thinking.
Yes, it is.
So yes.
It's model-based
So I
reasoning.
think, whether it's money, whether it's water, whether it's air, whether it's energy, whether it's, materials, whether it's anything else, the whole life cycle accountability and all the interactions between them to the second, third, fourth, and the infinite order is systemic thinking of a form. So I thought that was a good reference, but that doesn't necessarily pop up when you just see the words life cycle accountability, right?
Yeah.
So
You have to
anyway,
be a system thinker to appreciate the subtlety involved there, that it assumes that we need models that we don't have, that have details that we don't have. Oh, here's Kayla. We'll let Kayla catch up.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the participants list, so I'll have to go back. Hey, Kayla, how are you doing? We're trying a new experiment today.
Yeah, no worries.
Are you on your phone, or I think you're normally on your phone, but I'm sharing something on a big screen, so it might not be legible or readable or
On a giant
clear
screen, you
on a
really
small
can't read
display.
much. It's too much tiny text.
Yeah. It's okay.
But
Carry on.
if you go in and zoom, presumably you have a zoom function on your screen. Maybe you could actually then read some of what's here. But anyway, I used the starting point, which was a post from Richard Saunders earlier this week, about 3 or 4 days ago, where he said, in a modern enlightened society, here are 8 or 9 things that he would like to see. So just in brief, general utility, life cycle accountability, subsidiarity, relative openness and transparency, conditional ownership, fair and regulated competition between public and private sectors, limit wealth inequality, then instant runoff involving ranked choice voting for elections, and federal forensic audits and statewide recounts for elections. So those are the points that he made. I think he's got some good thinking behind it. And so that's why I proposed it as a topic for discussion today. That
Awesome.
hopefully catches you up a little bit. And then Barry and I were going through each of those points. So for example, we've gone through the first 2, general utility and life cycle accountability so far. Josh is also here, but he has been silent so far. So what we said about general utility is, Richard says it's the greatest good for the greatest number. And I said, well, that's one interpretation of general utility. Another one could be, suppose we define it as the most beneficial outcome for our survival, where survival means planet-wide, all species, all ecosystems. Okay. And my problem with the first statement about greatest good for the greatest number is it might be taken to be too human-centric. In other words, if all the humans die, but all the humans live, but all the dolphins die, or all the elephants die, is that still a good thing? Is that still the greatest good for the greatest number? On the other hand, if I say it's planet-wide and all species and all ecosystems, some people may say, well, do we really want locusts? Do we really want these kinds of hornets? Do we really want blah, 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 blah? Okay, so
Right.
that's also controversial. Do we really want psychopathic killers?
It's vague. The problem is it's vague. It
Right.
Of
sounds
course, but
good,
this is where we have to start, right? We can't actually just delve into a 500-page definition from the beginning, but this is the beginning of a conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay, so given that, I'd be curious to see what you and Josh think, but since you're on right now, how does this list of 9 or 8 sound? And to you, what does general utility mean, if you agree with it? Or maybe you don't, I don't know.
I'm not sure if Kayla can see the chat because I think she joined.
Well, that's
after
why I'm
the chat.
talking about it verbally.
Yeah. I general utility. Hold on. Let me see if I can zoom in.
Maybe if we
Ah,
repeat, maybe if we repeat the
please
chat.
zoom
Wait,
in.
I heard a scream.
Well, when I try to zoom in, ah, hold on.
While you're
I
doing
feel
that,
like
I'm going to sign off my other session and join. Okay, go ahead.
an idiot because
I mean, we could repeat the
okay, I found it. Yay! You guys can keep talking and then
You can either we can either put it back in the chat or you can go to the posting on Facebook where this came from.
Oh,
Because,
yeah. I just saw the posting. I was looking on Facebook and I saw
well,
it.
then, yeah, if you can see if you can read the posting, then I don't need to put it back in the chat again for you.
Yeah. Amigos.
The chat's
General
terrible.
utility. What did they say? Utility. Greatest good for the greatest number. Yeah, it's that word utility is throwing me off.
Yeah, it's a technical term in utilitarian function theory, and the problem is that it's not well defined.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. Very vague.
a
The
lot of
greatest
the
good for the
stuff,
greatest number.
right? A
And
lot
that's
of the
number
stuff is
one.
very, very vague. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all perspective too.
Not a bad idea. It's just imprecise. It's vague.
Okay, testing. How's my audio? How's my video?
You're very weak, Sam. I can barely hear you.
Okay, testing. How's my
You're
audio?
Very weak.
Sam. We can barely hear you.
Okay,
Yeah. You should have stayed on your old one with your headphones. While you guys do that, mess with that, I'm gonna get my phone because somebody texted me twice.
Have I mentioned that I hate Windows?
Many times. We know that. You also hate Macintosh. We know that. And you hate theology. We know that.
No, I do not hate theology. That's a definite misinterpretation.
Well, you talk against it a lot. Let's put it that way.
No, I hate religiosity. I love theology.
Well, I was trying to get you to have a more appreciation for theomethy, the subset of theology that's also mathematical, which is almost never discussed, does have a role to play.
Hey, I've been trying to go there for weeks and months, and you can't get past my apparent disgust for churches and religiosity, and you think you mix it up with theology.
Because theology includes. The problem is that you can talk about the abstraction of divinity without having deities. You could be a theist without being a deist, and it's really subtle. And most of the Western religions have deities. Taoism, Buddhism do not have deities. They're more like philosophies, and they have abstractions in lieu of deities. And the Dalai Lama, for example, says, help people if you can. If you can't help them, try not to hurt them.
Yes.
That doesn't involve any deities.
Yes, but it's also not a religion.
Well, that's the point, is that it to some people, it's a religious concept or a theological concept. And so I don't want to rule it out that you're not allowed to have that perspective. Because there's a lot of people for whom abstractions are just not, their brains are not wired for abstractions, and they need storybooks. They need stories with storybook characters to possess a concept, even though the concept is abstract. They can't possess the abstract concept unless it's enrobed in a story with the character. That's just reality for our brains. Human brains are like that. They're like 95% of the population. You got to give them license to have stories with storybook characters, or they're locked out of abstract concepts entirely.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you
that's
notice
always horrifying. I'm sorry, Sam, you are still very low. I can actually talk over you.
Okay, how about this microphone? Is this microphone any better? Testing,
That's
testing.
good.
Way better.
That's good.
Be better? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll keep it on this microphone then. All right, so Barry, one of the reasons for having this visual is that in this upper right, we were trying to be topic focused. But as we digress, I put your comments about theology and theomathy and abstractions down here. You see associated with your name here, because I can't get connected directly with what we were talking about up here in the purple section, right?
Right.
Well, just wanted to know that I'm hearing you, I'm listening, I'm tracking, but it's also a way for us to understand focus and when we deviate from focus. All right. All right. So I see at this point, I could either choose to follow up on your comments about theomathy and some mathematics and abstractions, etc., which would keep us down in the lower part of this, or I could say, hey guys, we're off the rails. If we wanted to talk about modern enlightened societies, let's go back up, to this upper section here. So without a common understanding, I'm presenting you with a choice. If I was truly a assertive moderator, I would pick one and just go with it.
You have to ask yourself, whose benefit are these sessions? Are they for your benefit, for the public benefit, for our collective four-person benefit? I don't really know whose
What is the
benefit
general
we're doing
utility?
this.
Okay. I'll answer the question for you. It's definitely for my benefit. I see value here. And I'm trying to make it clear and presentable so that people that come after us get value out of it. If it's just a random jumble of verbal rants, as you claim these sessions are, then that's why I'm trying to do something different here. Okay, I'm trying to make it sure that we capture our focus and at least can track it visually, so that we hopefully get distracted less. Over. Okay, so Kayla, if I recall, you were about to zoom in on the screen and you screamed.
I already did.
Okay,
It's
so
zoomed.
did you get anything out of the Zoom?
Um, I'm still on general utility.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very broad.
Yeah, that's it. It's vague. It's not bad. It's not wrong. It's just vague.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I understand it. I get it. Like in the general sense of it, yes, I get it. So if he is putting up these points, then I get it. So on to number two.
If you're a Star Trek fan, I guess one of the lines in one of the movies was the goods of the many outweigh the good of the one, or something like that, right? It's
Yeah.
a 1,000-year-old notion, but Star Trek brought it back to life with that one particular quote. So it's a general reference also to general utility, where utility is not in the form of appliance, but it's in terms of usefulness, of value.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you think that greatest good for the greatest number captures that, or do you have another notion of what general utility or greatest good means?
Yeah, the greatest good for the greatest number.
Okay, so you're there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what about life cycle accountability? Any thoughts on that one?
Life cycle accountability. I have to for reference back to incorporate all known. I like the systems thinking reference. Again, it's very general, but
Yep,
I feel like he did that so that everyone can kind of grasp the general idea.
sure.
And
He wasn't
you
writing,
know,
he was doing a Facebook post.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
All right. So Barry,
but
unless
I
you have any
also,
other thoughts, I thought we'd just do this breadth first, if that's okay with both of you.
yeah. By
All
the way,
right.
I have to take off at 9:30. I have to take my son to son somewhere. I mean, I could still be listening
Shoot.
on my phone, but that's it.
Yeah. I forgot I also have a conflict at 9 today. This is unfortunate. You guys are welcome to go until 9:30, but I unfortunately just this one time have a conflict at 9 o'clock.
Oh, yeah. No, we could 15 minutes is perfect.
Okay, so let's see if we can go breadth first on subsidiarity right now. So what he says about subsidiarity is social and political issues are handled at the lowest or most local level that is consistent with their solution. I would not have guessed that, but I'm going to put that in here, okay?
Social and political issues handled at the lowest and most local level that is consistent with their solution. Hey, shh.
Okay, I just put it in there. Okay, so I think in general, I agree with that. It's in software, maps to a notion called implementation hiding. And that's going to mean nothing to people that are not in the software business. But it basically says, if you've got a small subsystem, all that you really need to know at the outer level is a minimum set of things. Okay. You don't really want to be bothered with all the details about how something goes. So let me think about an example here. Let me say I've got an employee. Let me say Kayla's got an employee, and she gives this person a job to do the audit report for,
Hey,
let's company XYZ, right? Now,
okay.
if I'm a general manager at Kayla's company, I might just need to know, is it done? Is it not done? Does it meet general accepted accounting procedures, et cetera, et cetera? But I don't need to know all the 58 pages of, detailed, uh, fine print, right? So that's a bad example. I can't come with a very good first example yet. But it basically says, treat things at the level that they should be treated, and don't bother others with extraneous details. That's one very bad way of saying it. So that's what I see him saying about subsidiarity. I'm going to add this note
Yeah.
about it hiding. Okay, Barry, any thoughts on subsidiarity?
Yeah, well, I said it before. I'm not sure how to say it coherently, but the problem is that you can have policies that vary from one location to the next that are okay locally in each individual location. But if you have people who are traveling, who are visiting both locations, then they can't have, that person has to change their practice as they travel. And that becomes problematic because people can't keep track of well, if I'm in this part of town, I got to do it this way. But if I'm in that part of town, I got to do it that way. And I don't have a consistent practice that I can rely on. And it's very few things don't have a knock-on effect outside of their locale. Almost everything does have a knock-on effect outside of their locale. And so I'm kind of leery of having dissimilar practices from one location to the next. That means you don't have a unified civilization or unified norm that people can keep track of.
I might refer to the way we treat obscenity in this way, right? It's supposed to be defined by the community, and each community defines obscenity differently, but yet we've lived with that notion for decades, right?
well, lived with, suffered with, I would say. Because information doesn't have a location. Information can live, in cyberspace or, any spaces. Information is not necessarily confined and never leak to other locations.
I agree with that, but wouldn't you also agree that this is the way that obscenity is treated in the law today? That it's
I don't know
left.
about today. I don't know about today. It certainly was for a long time that you could have books, quote, banned in Boston or whatever, and it tended to be localized. But with the information economy, as we have it today, I don't know if those old-fashioned notions really are practical anymore. Information.
I'll give you another example then. Here in the US, we drive on the right side of the street. In the UK, they drive obviously on the left side of the street, right? So those are issues handled at that level of regional agreement, right?
Have you ever been to the Virgin Islands?
The Virgin Islands? No.
Yes. There are 2 American Virgin Islands and 1 British Virgin Island. There's 3 Virgin Islands.
Yep.
The British Virgin Islands, you drive on the right. The American Virgin Islands, you drive on the left. And if you've ever been to the Virgin Islands and you generally visit all 3 of them, it's a god-awful mess. It's very dangerous.
Yeah, I agree, right? So anyway, we're not talking about whether it's a good system or not. We're just trying to understand the concept here. That's where I'm trying to go with.
This is why it's a problem, because there are individuals for whom it's crazy making. It's crazy making policies where you have to change your behavior, which is habitual behavior. And you have to change it from one location to the next, and it's crazy making. It makes people crazy.
Okay, well, one possible objection to what you're saying then, is, hey, therefore, Barry, do you, number one, believe that we need a planet-wide set of agreements / governance model? Or number two, what you're saying might conflict then with this United Nations notion of self-determination. Let's say...
It's an unresolvable problem.
Why do you say it's unresolvable?
Well, because empirically it is unresolvable. I mean, a paper you could resolve it, but then an autocrat has to declare it. Then you don't have an autocrat. You don't have a global autocrat who can declare it, and everybody is obliged to obey it.
Maybe. Let's see. How was NIST able to set standards on, let's say, what a gram is, or what a meter is, or what a nanosecond is, right? We need some agreement on these things. And did any autocrat come by and say, this is what a meter is going to be, this is what a millisecond is going to be, et cetera, et cetera?
Those are kind of subtle, because for most people, you don't care when you get down to the nanosecond or the nanometer.
That I think is a secondary issue, though. Some set of people had to make that agreement. And was that done automatically?
So scientists might agree on units, but then the general public don't have to agree with what the scientific units are. And so you have the word ounce, which has 2 different meanings. The word ounce has 4 different meanings.
Very.
Troy ounce, portapoi ounce.
You're talking about the history of it, but I'm talking about the concept of the agreement.
The agreement only applies to specific demographics. If you belong to 2 different demographics, then you have to have 2 different definitions depending on what demographic you're working in. And again, it's crazy me.
Right. So that's why you believe there ought to be a single authority for these kinds of agreements, which suggests that you want a planet-wide agreement, because otherwise you're going to have regional differences, and that seems to be a detriment in your presentation right now.
And I don't think it's realistic to have a planet-wide authority, even though that would be a solution. I don't think it's a practical solution, because you can't get everybody to agree to have one autocrat.
a number of ways to go with this. Anyway, I'm going to leave that for the moment because I think we have some other things to get to in the next 5 minutes. By the way, let me just pop up and say, has the existence or has the usage of this visual helped us with focus and helped us with memory or helped us with tracking the conversation or not?
It's an unresolved question in my mind because, first of all, the printing is so damn small I can hardly read it, and at my age I'm getting to the point where I don't have the information processing capacity to utilize it.
Okay, I made it bigger now. But yeah, it's true. I am on a 4K screen. But okay, these fonts are probably more readable now, right, Barry?
Well, you made them bigger, so they're easier to read now, but I'm
Right.
seeing fewer of them, so I don't see the whole thing.
It's always a problem with real estate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
it helps. It helps to see a visual.
thank you, Kayla. Yeah, I'm not going to say definitively after one try. Obviously, I'm an amateur at using this tool, but I'm going to try using it for several sessions and then ask for another checkpoint later on. One of the downsides is we can't see each other as well, but hey, we already know what each other looks like, and many people come without their cameras on anyway. Okay. All right, so I'm going to leave it at this point. In 3 minutes, I have to go and I have to prepare for the other one. So I apologize. I only have 1 hour for this session. You two are welcome to keep going. I just need, sorry, I forgot to announce this at the beginning to get onto this other thing for now. Okay. So I'm
No
gonna stop.
worries. I'm actually gonna utilize this opportunity to get ready.
All right. So if you and Barry want to keep continuing for the next half hour, you're certainly welcome to do so. And I will drop off in a minute.
All right. I'm actually going to leave. Like I said, I was going to use this opportunity to get ready. Unless there's something you want to say, Barry.
Not really. I mean, there are things that I've been thinking about that I wanted to communicate to Sam, but Sam's not going to be here, so there's no point in trying to do that anyway. And Joshua is,
Let's do something tomorrow because I know that there's various different points we could have talked about, but tomorrow seems like another opportunity.
yeah, so, and it doesn't matter because I'm a very slow thinker and I tend to wait until I've really thought something through thoroughly, which means I'm usually the last person to pontificate on something because I want it to be as objective and analytical as possible and not governed by personal preference.
Awesome. Thanks, Barry.
Yeah.
All right, Sam. Bye.
So I guess if Josh is off, I think we're done.
I'm here listening, Barry. If there's
Oh.
something that was on your mind, I'd love to listen.
Well, yeah, I can try to. It had to do with I don't know. You probably don't remember this, but I wrote a Facebook post about opinions, and it was a very negative view of opinions. That opinions are worthless. Basically, was the key takeaway from it. And the reason that I thought opinions were worthless is because opinion is basically a personal preference, and it's not necessarily objective. I mean, conceivably, you could have an objective reason why an opinion is the sole surviving perspective, but generally speaking, opinion is articulated as a personal preference. And most opinions, somebody can articulate a plausible opposing opinion. And now you have a deadlock. And if you have a deadlock that either both sides are stuck on their position, you're not going to resolve it. The only way you can resolve it is if there is some objective analysis that can cut through the preferences to something that both sides would say, "Oh, that's better. I like your innovative idea that neither of us thought of is better than either of our opinions." And in my own professional life, when I tried to resolve disagreements, I usually had to find a third solution that everybody thought was better than either of their opinions. And there are very few people who are able to invent the excluded middle, that the competing opinions then drop, both of them fall by the wayside. But that's why I think opinions are kind of not worth the argument. You basically just end up with an unresolved argument that never resolves.
Yeah, I think the intention behind the opinion, meaning to move something forward or to win the argument, or what the intention is really important.
Yeah. And very often people pick opinions because their personal value or their personal faction gains. So one side gains relative to the other. And if one side is gaining relative to the other, and that means the other side's losing, and so you have a win-lose proposition, and you don't get to a win-win. The only way to get to a win-win is have a third option that neither side thought of. And so I tend to, I don't always articulate a plausible opposing opinion, because I think, well, what's the point? We're just going to end up in an unresolved argument. That's a waste of time and energy. And that's why I really like objective analytical thinking, which is extremely difficult to do at all, and extremely difficult to communicate so that people can follow it and see its value. And as a result, I tend to just shrug and say, it's too much work. I can't convince anybody. The analysis is too arcane, too technical, too mathematical, too difficult to wrap your brain around. And I just have to wait for people to discover empirically that their opinion leads to an infelicitous outcome. And you just you have to wait until everybody discovers it the hard way. And I hate that, but I don't have enough, I don't have enough power to overthrow that.
Yeah, I just keep thinking that was the old paradigm of waiting to discover, but now with the amount of information processing we have, we don't have to wait anymore.
Well, the thing is that the argument, or not the argument, but the analysis can be constructed, but the argument, the construction can be so arcane and difficult to understand, like in a lot of science and physics and economics and so on. The average person simply can't process the information. And it's like I show you a proof and I say, here's a proof of a mathematical theorem. Check the proof and see if you agree with it. The average person can't do that. The average person will look at proof and say, well, I don't see anything wrong with it, but how do I know? So they can't evaluate it. And that's the problem with a lot of these analyses, is the average person doesn't have the brain power to evaluate it. So they basically shrug and say, well, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. I don't know.
And what is so if that happens, the average person is looking to who to solve the divergence of opinion, or of, when something goes awry, where, okay, we've created something new, but I don't understand what that new thing is. Who solves that conflict?
That's it. It doesn't get solved. It persists for a very long time, often until the person dies.
Sure.
And
or even if it gets solved, it gets reconfused again with another opinion.
yeah. Or, so people will live with an injustice. You can live with a very small injustice for a very long time, but not indefinitely.
Right.
Small injustice that persists indefinitely leads eventually to a tipping point. Say you have an economic injustice that some demographic is earning a dime less for the same amount of work. All right, so big deal. But if it's a dime less for a whole lifetime, pretty soon, you care. Pretty soon you reach a tipping point, and then you get some kind of a reaction. It's like this guy who killed this CEO, this life insurance CEO. That's an example where you had an economic injustice. You can compute the economic injustice of unfair insurance claims. And for most people, they'll say, well, okay, it's costing me extra $10 or an extra $30, but it's not the end of, it's not the end of the world. But for some people, it is the end of the world. Some people are going bankrupt. And eventually,
Right.
you're going to have some random, unanticipated person go off the deep end, which is what happened with this shooting of this guy in New York. And you look at it and you go, our species doesn't have the analytical skills to resolve this because we're not smart enough. And even if the AIs are smart enough, we don't understand the AIs because they're smarter than we are. We don't, we can't wrap our brains around it. So we have to wait for really bad things to happen. We have to wait for some god-awful event that sort of resolves it empirically.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I think it comes down to a time problem is how much time do you let pass before you say, okay, I'm not going to wait till this builds up, meaning like changing your oil on your car. People say, okay, this is the standard window, like 3 months. We don't want to wait longer than 3 months, but we don't want to do it every week,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, the only solution that I can see for resolving a long, lingering, small inequity is the arts. In the arts, you can create an artful protest, which is non-coercive. So if I write a poem or do a painting or write a play or something that's a work of art, it can articulate a perspective, which is a minority perspective, but it's not coercive. You're not obliged to be persuaded by it. You might be, but you haven't taken away anybody's free choice. And the whole point is that the arts are the antithesis of power. Power says, my preference gets to prevail. And the artist says, my preference simply says I get to do some art. But it doesn't
Right.
prevail. And so I think that people underappreciate the role of the arts as a way to articulate a minority preference without exercising power over others, coercing a solution. But most people are not very good at the arts. I'm not very good at the arts, even though I've tried.
It's a really interesting look at what the arts is in terms of functionality.
I mean, look at movies. People write these movies or whatever you want to call them, plays or movies or short stories or whatever, which presents a minority perspective. And there are people who will say, that's a good point, make a good point. That minority was facing an inequity. And they may be the only one on the planet, but the arts are able to articulate it without demanding that there's any. In fact, the telling of the story is the recompense.
Right. The weight is subjective, and in so being that the weight, meaning the power that it carries, that subjectivity holds an objective
Right.
move forward. So it's both subjective.
Having your
Yeah.
story told may be sufficient recompense for having been in a minority position.
Right. That's a beautiful thing to have something that's both subjective and objective at the same time so that it's not powering over.
And that's why I like to keep the door open to theology, because theology is a whole lot of stories. I mean, most theology is in the form of stories, and those stories are about injustices that wouldn't be appreciated except for the fact that they're told as a story. And that's how you get mercy. You look at somebody like Trump, who is vengeful and vindictive, and you say the opposite of vengeful and vindictive is to be ruthless. He's ruthless, and the word ruth, is a synonym for mercy. Ruth and mercy are synonyms. So the whole idea is that the rule of law says, well, if you have a hard and fast rule, then you're merciless. If you break the rule, you got to be punished. And the antithesis of that is mercy or ruth. And that comes from theology, that just because somebody is reacting because they're hurt doesn't mean that you're entitled to hurt them back. And the notion that you're entitled to hurt somebody back because you have power to do it, this is a fundamental flaw in the architecture of civilization.
I agree.
And that fundamental flaw is revealed mainly through the art of storycraft, which could be secular stories or it can be theological stories, but they're storycraft. That's how you reveal this absence of mercy.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think about a lot is at any point in time, the power can shift.
That's the whole point.
So,
Look at Assad.
yeah,
Assad
yeah.
is a classic example. People are, I mean, his family had this terrible, terrible power for what, 50 years or something. And overnight, and people were not predicting this. People didn't see this coming until it happened.
Yep.
And now
think
he's
that-
off in Russia, and he's protected as long as Putin's in power. Putin is going to be in power forever. And once Putin's out of power, in 30 years or whatever long it's going to be, then Assad is screwed. So now he's going to live in fear for the next 30 years of his life.
Yep.
Which you might say is poetic justice. Maybe it is, but the whole thing is cockeyed. I mean, we really haven't come to terms with the flaw of autocratic governance. I mean, we voted in America for an autocrat. Russia has an autocrat. America now has a new autocrat. Nixon was an autocrat. And every time we have autocrats, if you look, Nero was an autocrat. Every time you look at autocrats who are narcissistic personality characters, you see net harm to the general civilization. But we haven't learned that. Our voting system is voting for autocrats. And the other thing is that if you have an opinion, what you tend to do with an opinion is rob people of hope. The only thing, if you're a minority, all you have left is hope. And hope is the emotional sponsor of research. Research is very rare, very challenging, very uncommon, but hope is the emotional sponsor of research, and you don't want to kill off research, even if it's only a glimmer of hope. And that's one reason I don't like opinions, because it kills hope. Don't kill hope. Don't kill research. Don't leave people in a despondent, hopeless state, because that's unhealthy. That's
the energy stops flowing. Yep.
So you want to keep hope alive, because that's, if you believe in systems theory and research, then you have to believe in hope, because that's your sponsor. And those are the points which I don't think I've communicated to Sam in an effective way. I don't think he aligns with that. I think he will. I think he's been arguing against that. And I want to make that an analytical, mathematical.
Well, can you branch off the different branches of hope? Meaning, I think what I see is that hope, blind faith, or hope, or any kind of energy without discernment, any kind of energy of just it happens because it happens without any causation or reason why, I think is what Sam's trying to push back on. Like religiosity, as he says it, is a faith without a backing of reason or logic.
And I would argue that faith in the scientific method is a faith. That you have faith in research, even though there's no guarantee The research is going to generate a solution. If you don't have any faith in research, you don't sponsor it.
Well, yeah, it gets down to the very makeup of reality itself. Do you believe that we live in an objective world or a subjective world? And I think you need a little bit of both. And I think that's why science is so much fun, is because you can constantly, it's never static over a longer period of time. There is no objective truth.
Well, I mean, the point is that I think it's foolish, unwise to stomp out faith and hope, because then you wouldn't have the chance of research discovering the solution. And if you want to have a survivable civilization, then civilization does have to eventually solve the unsolved problems. And the unsolved problems are only going to be solved if somebody's working on them. And they're going to be working on them. They have to be sponsored. They have to somehow be able to survive while they're working on these problems, which may or may not be solved. And so faith and hope are essential ingredients in a survivable situation. And you can't simply say there's no basis for faith. There has to be a mathematical probability that it's going to save us. It is if anything is going to save us, it's the faith that we're going to discover a solution to not kill ourselves off.
Right. You have to have the belief that there is a solution. Otherwise, there's nowhere left to go.
Exactly. And I consider that article of faith essential, without which there is no science. And that's why I see theology and science as having a common point. The common point where theology and science meet is theomethy, which is faith that research is eventually going to save us. And if it doesn't, then we're doomed. And we don't want to be doomed.
But that's why I always say I'd rather be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right.
Yeah. And that's why this opinion, that's why I think that opinions are problematic, because they cause people to lock heads in these détentes or impasses that consume time and energy, and make no progress.
Right. So the way I look at it, let's just say we're starving for knowledge, we're starving for betterment, we're starving for enlightenment. We're on this pathway, this journey to find the food that will feed us, this information, this love, this whatever you want to call it, all the goodness, the richness, the deliciousness of life.
Yeah.
But if you're on that journey and someone wants to stop and discuss the journey, now you're dead, because you're not looking for any kind of sustenance.
It's keep some spirit alive. You have to have at least some spirit to motivate the effort to solve the problem.
Yeah, you need movement. You need energy in the system. You can't
Right.
stop the system.
Right. And so, eschew dispirited practices. Dispirited practices are delaying the solution. And I will admit that some spirited things are not going to prevail. That they may just be a waste of time. But nonetheless, since you don't really know, don't kill off spirit.
Yeah.
It's unwise. Leave a glimmer of hope and spirit and faith available so that we're not doomed.
Yep.
I don't know how to articulate that for everybody's benefit, but that's the thing that needs to be articulated.
I think everybody knows that. I think when you're a kid, you have a whole bowl full of spirit.
Yeah.
And then people just constantly dump out a little bit here and there, and before you know it, your bowl's empty.
Yeah, don't completely deplete all of your spirit, because then you're depressed and despondent, and you commit suicide.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one thing I learned is It's not what you do, it's just to do, period, that matters.
Yeah.
It doesn't like I've been in places in my life where I have no hope. It's just despair. It's just awful. And it's that famous saying, when you can't, you must. So when there's no hope and you can't do it, there's no possible way to get through. That's the time when you find your
Yeah,
real
when you
grit.
bottom out. Yeah, when you
Yeah,
bottom out, um, when you hit the floor repels you.
yeah,
You can fall and fall and fall, but eventually when you hit the floor has this quantum phenomenon that repels you back up again.
exactly.
So
So it does.
sometimes you have to bottom out. Sometimes you do bottom out, and sometimes when you
I think
bottom
it's
out,
healthy to bottom. I think it's healthy to bottom out. I think a lot of people are afraid to bottom out because it's that force of hitting the floor that's so scary.
yeah. Anyhow, I wish were better at articulating that point because I think that's where Sam and I are not in alignment.
Well,
But
maybe you need to lean into the arts a little more.
unfortunately, I suck at the arts.
Well, you say that all the time, but I mean, there's no day where you have to take your own advice, have a glimmer of hope. I mean, you never really, maybe you haven't tried it as hard as maybe every time you fail, you say, okay, I suck at this. I shouldn't try anymore. Maybe try a little harder.
or invite other people to try to do the arts where I'm not finding the way to do it. I've got two correspondents who are trying to do something in the arts that is consistent with my mathematics, but it's hard because my mathematics is not easy for the
But I'm
non-mathematician
saying,
to get their
I'm saying
mathematics.
artistically, maybe lean into what you didn't think was art is actually art, meaning visually.
Yeah,
Maybe make a collage and you put 5 things on the board. Maybe put 12 things. Maybe put 36 things. Maybe put 140 things. Maybe it doesn't get to art until it's 500 things.
I, yeah. This is where I admire people who are good at the arts because I realize that I've made attempts at the arts and haven't had any number one greatest hits. So,
No, I'm not saying you're going to have a great hit, but I'm just saying, let's just say I tried to write a song and I got 3 notes in. Dum, dum, dum. That's only 3 notes. You can't really hear anything.
no.
So
Anyhow,
even if yeah, I'm
I,
saying like try a little harder is what I'm saying, Barry, is artistically, I think there's a lot of other mediums that you haven't tried yet.
or just alternative, leave the door open for other people to do what I haven't succeeded in. Invite your
Either or, I'm just saying, like, when you say artistically, like, have you arranged buttons in a pattern? You
things.
probably never thought that buttons could be the medium of art that conveys every message you want to convey.
Probably not.
I'm saying, like, have you ever done origami?
Well, yeah, I've done origami, but it's been
Yeah, but
ages.
how many did you do?
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't.
How many folds? How many colors? Do you see what I'm saying? I'm saying like art is not something you give up on. You try it once. That's not art. That's just
Yeah.
crafting.
No. But I realize I'm aging. My faculties are diminishing. I'm
Yeah, I gotcha.
talk. The time is running out, and oftentimes, you never know what's going to make a difference. You won't. The answer won't come until after you're gone, so you don't know before you're dead if you made a difference or not.
Or you could just believe you did and live the rest of your life knowing you did.
Well, it could also be self-deluded. I don't really like to be self-deluded. I like to have some.
Try it. I highly recommend it as an artist. I'm saying without that self-delusion, you'll never move forward. Because if you really believe that you have something to offer, you'll get up on stage. If you don't, you'll never even get up on the stage.
Well, I mean, I've been invited to get up and speak, and I have spoken, and often, like even in Toastmasters, if I get up and answer extemporaneously, I often do say something nobody ever thought of before that kind of
Yeah.
helps people. But then the question is, if I have a reputation for saying things that people haven't heard of that makes them stop and think, why don't they ask me to speak more often? And the answer is, I don't know why they don't. They don't.
Who's they though?
But the people like Toastmasters who have to invite people to speak up.
Yeah, but I'm saying okay, that's one group. How many places you go to?
Well, for example, consider these calls. If I speak up, Sam will get mad at me because I'm interrupting him. So I'm not invited to speak up here. I'm dissuaded from speaking up because Sam finds that he finds that disturbing.
Then you got to go to a different call, Barry.
Well, that's so I say, well, why don't I just get off of this call so that because I'm not invited to speak up here.
If that is a feeling, then yeah, definitely go to other calls. What I'm trying to say is going down one pathway and saying that's the only hallway that exists. You need to go to different pathways.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I blog because nobody can say to me, "Don't blog." If I
Right.
blog, nobody is obliged to read a blog. It's like a piece of art. If nobody's obliged to look at it. Whereas if I'm
I,
talking on a call, people are sort of obliged to listen. And I don't want
yeah.
to coerce people into listening to me. I don't think that makes sense.
Hey, on a side note, Barry, I found a app from Google called Google Take. Are you familiar with that app?
Google Take. If I have, I've forgotten it. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I don't know when it came out. I don't know how long it's existed, but I just found it and it says you can download everything you've ever done, every blog, every anything from Google.
Oh, yeah, I think I have downloaded stuff off of different Google things. I didn't know what it was called, but I think I have downloaded all my Google stuff.
Yeah, I'm just playing with it myself because I'm trying to get everything off my Google Drive and trying to pull things off of cloud servers. So I just saw there was a link to not just Blogger, but all your history of every browser. Just, a lot of interesting information that's worth taking off Google,
Yeah.
especially in this. I don't know if you saw ChatGPT, the OpenAI company, their 12 days of OpenAI.
Was that a news story recently? No, I haven't seen it.
It's a marketing promotion to
Oh,
release a bunch of features in ChatGPT. So they releasing a new feature every day for the last, I think they're up to day 8 today.
are these premium features or free features?
Everything for enterprise, premium, unpaid, all
Yeah.
their
No, I haven't been following. I've been
okay.
sick for one thing, so I haven't really been following a lot of events that are in the news because I'm just logy and tired and
No,
sick.
no problem. I just yeah, I'm in so much AI forums where everybody's, you know, like I just get that information. I'm inundated with it.
Yeah.
Like the Gemini stuff, like all the AI stuff this week, they said it was more stuff got launched this last week than this whole last year. So
Anyhow,
yeah.
so anyway, that's where I am. I'm kind of a little bit, I'm not 100%, and that's sort of understandable at my age and health conditions and whatnot.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm not feeling the greatest this morning, which is why I'm not on the call. I just turned my camera on. I looked at myself and I scared myself.
Oh, I just wasn't even
Look, I'm not looking the greatest
wasn't even
either.
looking at the screen because there was nothing to look at.
No, 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 it's okay. I'm just saying I'm not looking the greatest either. So I'm like my head is all stuffed up, and I'm just like, ah.
Well, at least I'm health wise, I'm eating solid foods and moving my bowels, and I'm not throwing up, and I'm getting a little more sleep. So I think maybe by Monday, hopefully I'll be
Yeah,
back
it's
back in business again.
also wintertime too. I
Oh
think
yeah,
that's
that's really we had all this rain and
yeah.
weather and crapple, and I didn't go out of the house. Last time I was out of the house was last Thursday, a week ago Thursday. Last time I was out of the house.
If you want to see what Sam was talking about, here's the let me see. The wind just started picking up, but Yeah, we got some high winds over on the West Coast.
Okay, yeah. Here it's
It's hard
calm.
to.
Winds are calm here today, and the sun is out, but it's cold. It's cold and calm. But it's not raining. I mean, I didn't even go to pick up my mail because it's going to want to go out and rain. And I was fainting. I was afraid of going out and fainting while I was walking. So just,
Yeah. Yeah, that low energy. Have you gotten any decent food in your body today?
well, no, this morning I haven't had breakfast yet, but I'm gonna have a half a bowl of cereal, and then a friend of mine had brought me over some shepherd pie, which is really good, solid food that he made for me. And I had planned to make spaghetti, and I went ahead and cooked up the ground beef because it's sitting uncooked in the refrigerator. So I went ahead and cooked it up in advance. And today I'm going to finish making up the spaghetti sauce, and then I'll be able to work on that. And
If your body can process that, you're good.
I'll
If
be,
you could do
yeah,
ground beef.
yeah. So yeah, because the shepherd pie had some ground beef in it too, but didn't want to leave the ground beef uncooked in the refrigerator for like a week.
Yeah,
Um,
that's good.
So I went ahead and cooked it up in advance, and I'll finish doing that today, and that'll be my big solid food meal, pasta.
Nice. Yeah, I cooked up some salmon last night and I said, you know what, let's put it in the fridge and we can make omelets out of it the next day. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Anyhow, so I appreciate the chat, the extra half
Yeah,
hour.
no, I appreciate your love for the arts, Barry. I came to that realization when I was most depressed, I think at age 30. I was like, there's nothing to live for. There's no point. There's no purpose. I did every analysis of every scientific theory of, physics and theology and everything. There was no point. Nothing made any sense. And the only thing that made sense to me was music.
Yeah.
And then the 10 years after that, from 30 to 40, the amount of joy I got from not just making the music, but sharing it and then listening to others people's music, just being around musicians.
Well, that was why I was so impressed with Taylor Swift, because you don't think of her as a nerd or a geek, but she is, and she pulled together all these different skills at an astonishing level, and all she's doing is making music or art, which
Yeah.
nobody's obliged to attend to, and yet people are flocking to it, and I think that's really an amazing demonstration of the power of the arts and the skills that we consider geeks, nerd skills, systems thinking, making systems work, having all the piece parts work coordinated, collaborated, coordinated. And if you don't realize what an accomplishment that is, I think you're sort of out to lunch. You have to
Yeah.
really appreciate what the hell, how she pulled that off. That's an amazing achievement. None of the other geeks, Elon Musk or Bezos or Gates or any of these, they're not in her league at all.
They're not artists. Yeah, I saw Elon Musk try to do comedy one time on Saturday Night Live. It was pretty hard to watch,
Yeah.
but he tried. At least he gave it a try, though.
Well, yeah, and I tried comedy too. I'm a little better at comedy than the average person, but I'm not great.
Yeah. I always think, though, with art, a lot of people don't know what art is, and including myself. There's so many times where I think I'm not an artist. I'm just doing this thing that I do. And then someone says, well, you know what? That really affected me and that moved me. And that thing that you do is very artistic. And I go, really? I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think sort of makes sense, if you're going to do something, if you can do it artistically as opposed to inartistically, do it artistically. The more artistically you do something, the more eyeballs and attention you're going to get. And so it is beneficial to attempt to be artful, and eschew being artless to the extent that you can, even though you may not
Well,
count on that.
I guess what I'm trying to communicate, Barry, is whether you're ever recognized, whether anyone ever sees what you do, whether it's ever shared or whatever, that's not the point. That's not what matters. What matters is the journey of doing. If it
Well,
gives you
yeah,
profound profundity of joy,
yeah. The
then
personal
do it.
satisfaction is increased the more artistic it is.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you don't do art for other people, you do art for yourself. That's my point.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. You get satisfaction out of doing something more artfully than not.
Well, if you don't get satisfaction out of it, don't do it. That's what I'm trying to say.
I mean, some people who make meals, they'll make the meal artful, even though there's nobody to, other than themselves, to enjoy the meal.
I do that all the time. It really like when I plate something a certain way, as I'm carrying the plate to the table or to the couch or wherever I'm eating the plate, that joy of just looking at it
Yeah.
is just as yummy as when I'm eating it. Like I really like looking at the colors and the textures and the art. Like it gives me a certain amount of, how could I say, if I went scientific, I think it tells my body it's a signal to create certain chemicals of
Serotonin.
digestion.
Yeah.
Yeah, of it would really, like people that think that you're crazy for doing that, they don't get it because they're not actually producing the right type of digestive materials within their body, and they're not prepping their body to intake that food in a way that you are when you're laying it
Yeah.
out a certain way.
So you can do it in a way that gives you an increment of joy. Why not?
Well, it also makes me hungrier. I'm just saying, I want to eat it even more. Like if I just grab it and shove it in my mouth, I'm not letting my body take it's like reading a book. If I just read it at, or I'm listening to an audio on tape and I do it at 4 times the speed, I'm not really taking it in a joyful way. Whereas
Yeah.
if I
Yeah. Doing
read
it
it
more
slowly, yeah, if I
tedious and
really,
laborious. Don't do it tedious and laborious if you can avoid it. If you can make it fun, make it fun.
yeah. Or know that I think everyone has a different timing. That's my belief is that everyone goes through life at a different time speed,
Yeah.
and it could be milliseconds, but everyone thinks that we're all at the same speed and we're not.
And I know that I'm very slow moving. I've known for a long time I'm very slow moving.
Yeah. And I think everybody thinks that they're fast when they're really slow, and everyone thinks they're slow when they're really fast. So it's
Yeah.
that to me is when you share something with someone like my daughter, she keeps saying, Daddy, like she's watching a cartoon that's so cool, but it's not as cool as if someone else is looking. So she's like, Daddy, stop looking at your phone. Look at this cartoon.
Yeah.
It's fucking cool. And I think there's a joy of experiencing it with someone else because just by herself, there's only so much joy.
Exactly. You have the shared experience.
Yeah,
This is the
I think
problem with living
that's,
alone is you don't have very much shared experience.
I think theologically, or what is the word I'm looking for? Theosophically, theology, God created everything to have a shared experience. Otherwise, why would God create anything or a God or a theist? Like it just logically doesn't make sense. Like, why would you create everything? Oh, no, there's suffering. Well, they want to share that experience. Oh, there's joy. Let's share the experience. But otherwise, God would just turn his back to creation or her back to creation or whatever you want to define God as. So,
Whether you want God to be a storybook character as opposed to a pure abstraction.
or just a number that can't be divided. Imagine a number that has no division. The number 30, not 3974817 is solid and no one can ever devise it by anything else. Like it'd be a terrible number. It makes no sense.
So what I don't know is whether these calls with Sam are ever going to evolve to some kind of enlightenment. It'd be nice if they did, but my hopes are dwindling on that front.
Well, I think each of us individually get different things out of it. Sometimes we coalesce, sometimes we don't. To me, that's the fun of it.
But to get to enlightenment, I mean, in Buddhism, they don't have a deity, but they have the process of enlightenment, which takes the role of the deity. That the highest value is the process of enlightenment in Buddhism. And Martin Gardner, wrote a book called Aha Insight, and insight is just a synonym for enlightenment.
Yeah.
Insight, enlightenment. I have a high regard for insight and enlightenment, but it's uncommon. It's not a common experience. Epiphany, revelation, insight, enlightenment, those are satori, those are all kind of overlapping terms that refer to the same mental state of sort of the lights turn on and you see some connection.
Yeah. Yeah, from my understanding of studying Buddhism, it wasn't the enlightenment that got me into it. It was the idea of helping each other get to the shore of enlightenment, of nibbana.
Yeah.
So the bodhisattva principle is
Right.
not, it's not about, the thing that I like most about Buddhism is it's not about me.
Yeah. It's about helping others find the path, that not the path that's so much for yourself, but to enable and empower others to progress along the path. And
Yeah, well,
and
have you
Taoism,
been to a Buddhist temple recently? What's the Buddhist temple in your area?
I don't know if there is, well, I'm sure there is one, but I have never been to one.
Well, go hang out at the Buddhist temples. They're around, man. They're every place I go to, there's at least two or three in every town.
I'm sure there are. I mean,
They might be Korean or Thai or Cambodian or who knows what, but they're
no, but
around.
now that I think about it, I think there is a Korean Buddhist church up the street from where I live, but it's a tiny little, probably only 10 people. I'm not sure it's still open.
Even if it's one person sitting in a parking lot homeless, like go there, dude. It's worth it. Yeah.
Anyhow, I think we're about done, unless there's more that you want to
No,
schmooze.
all I'm gonna say is, Barry, I'll ask you every time I see you, how's the Buddhist temple doing until you go?
I have to even see if that even is I don't know if it even is a Buddhist temple.
All
I
right,
know
well,
it was Korean. I know it was a Korean speaking church, but it's in a direction I never drive. It's
yeah.
direction that goes opposite where I'm always driving to get in.
When I lived in New York, there was one in the weirdest spot. It was right next to the Manhattan Bridge, and it was like this Port Authority type place for Chinatown. So there was all these buses, and it was in just a weird spot. It didn't look very beautiful or anything, and it was kind of dirty and dingy. But when you go inside and that you smell the incense and you see the pictures, it was just something special about walking in there and just I always felt better when I walked out, just from experiencing the artwork on the walls and the stories. It's
Well,
nice.
there's something about spiritual spaces that, even though you don't think that a physical space can somehow necessarily imbue a spiritual experience, people report that. I mean, Stephen Colbert is telling a story where the Pope wanted to convene 160 comedians from around the world in every different language. And they all met in the Apostolic Chapel or whatever the place is. And a lot of them weren't Catholic, though, and he happened to be one, but a lot of the people who were comedians were not Catholic, but they all convened in this one occasion. And says they all walked into this one chamber, the Apostolic Chamber, and suddenly the ambience of the space, when the Pope walked in, it just had a spiritual experience that was independent of any denomination. It was just a kind of a spirituality,
Yep.
shared experience. Hard to explain.
That's how I feel about nature. Whenever someone says, "Oh yeah, nature, schmature, trees, bees, I don't care. It doesn't do affect me." But then I'll take them to the top of a mountain and they'll be like, "Whoa, I had an experience." I'm like, "Yeah, you sure did, didn't you?"
For me, a babbling brook, in the uh, national park in Babbling Brook was a big deal for me. Of course, I haven't been in a Babbling Brook National Park now for decades. Yeah.
Yeah, being by a creek, it's just that sound, the quietness in the creek is nice.
Anyhow,
All right, well, hang in there during the winter, Barry. It's just winter time.
take care. Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon, brother.
Bye bye.